Chapter 14, A Right Royal Pain. "Hath he popped his clonketh?" the Molar sisters asked. "If he has, can we eat him?" said Madame Macready, the geriatric banshee. She licked her crusty lips hungrily. Nancy had carried the prince inside, and he was now lying on a sofa in the reception hall, with everyone huddled around him. No one knew what to do, so we just stared at him. Grogbar's subjects and guards and wives seemed very unsurprised that he'd fainted, so I guess this was something he did quite a lot. In fact, for the most part, they didn't seem to care at all, and a lot of them had already plodded off for a paddle in the swimming pool. "He's dead!" shrieked Waylin Norris. "Don't be ridiculous," Mum snapped. "Prince Grogbar," Dad said, gently poking the little grey lump. "He's definitely dead," moaned Waylin Norris. "Norris, will you shut up?" Mum shot the ghost an angry glare. "He is," whimpered the ghost. "I've never known anyone so dead. With every passing second, that goblin is getting deader and deader. He's the deadest thing I've ever seen." "Ah!" Prince Grogbar screamed and sat bolt upright on the sofa as Waylin Norris reeled backwards and sprinted through the nearest wall. "Where am I?" "Your Highness." Mum sat down next to the petrified-looking goblin. "You're in the Nothing to See Here hotel, on holiday." "Yes," said Nancy. "You had a little fainting spell when you arrived. Maybe it was all the travelling, or your turban's on a wee bit tight." She reached out towards Grogbar's red turban with its diamond brooch. "Let's get this off you, dearie." Grogbar recoiled from Nancy as if she was trying to yank off his head. "No," he screeched. "You can't have it." Nancy stopped in her tracks and gawped at the prince with 8 wide eyes. "I'm on to you, you thief! You pirate!" Grogbar pointed a stumpy finger at Nancy. "You'll never get your filthy hands on my—" "Turban?" Nancy said. We all stared. What was the prince talking about? Had he gone completely potty? Silence filled the room. Grogbar looked slowly around at all our shocked faces, then lowered his hand and smiled a nervous, wonky smile. "Ha ha ha!" He laughed a bit too loudly. "Just kidding." We all carried on staring. "Right, is there anything we can get you?" Nancy asked, breaking the silence. "Anything at all?" "Yes," said Mum, looking flustered. "We're happy to provide you with anything you wish." Grogbar looked about the dozens of creatures surrounding him. Then his face twisted into a pompous, vinegary sneer. He stood up on the cushion he'd been lying on, puffed out his podgy chest and wedged his tiny hands onto his hips. "I am Prince Grogbar," he yelled, "ruler of the Golden Barrows, conqueror of the Dookie Deep, and I don't like this grottish, stinksome slum." "Perhaps you'd like us to show you to your room," said Mum. "We've saved you our deluxe penthouse. It's got a lovely sea view." "No," shouted the prince. "Not good enough. I want this room." "This room?" Mum looked like she was about to lay an egg. "Yes, this room, you prattling pook." "But this is the reception hall," said Dad. "Don't care." Grogbar shoved a hand in Dad's face. "I want this one. It's got a high ceiling and my own private plunge pool." "That's the fountain," Mum explained. "Wrong," Grogbar scoffed. "It's my own private plunge pool. Now, where are my servants?" He clapped his hands. "Musicians, dancers, call the royal foot massager." Before Mum and Dad could protest, a gaggle of goblins came running into the reception hall. Musicians gathered on the stone counter and instantly began playing, while others ran to the prince and started cooing and bowing. "I want beds, lots of beds." More goblins came tripping down the staircase, carrying mattresses above their tiny heads. 1 or 2 still had bed sheets on them and folded clothes. "That's my mattress!" gasped Gladys Potts, pointing at the sheets with a little doggy bone pattern. "Hands off," the prince hissed. "It's mine now. Everything is mine." I don't think I've ever been speechless in my life, but at that moment I couldn't have spoken even if you'd begged me to. The knobbly little whelp was taking over the entire hotel. You, Grogbar pointed at Nancy. I'm going to take a dip in my plunge pool and I want fresh spider silk towels. Make them now. A battalion of goblin guards surrounded Nancy and pointed their spears and swords at her. Nancy gasped in fright and started frantically weaving large fluffy towels out of web. It would be smart of you all to do exactly as I say, exactly when I say it. Grogbar announced to the entire room. If you want to live, that is. With that, the prince dropped his silk robes to the ground and stood there, butt naked, except for his turban and that stupid feather. Well, I never, the Mauler sisters gasped. Grogbar strutted towards the fountain, his plump grey bottom jiggling about like a pair of tiny, overboiled chickens. Call forth the royal bubble blowers, Grogbar bellowed as he lowered himself into the fountain. A team of goblin servants came running into the reception hall, clutching reed straws in their little hands. They circled the pool below the water witch statue, dropped to their knees and dipped the ends of the straws in the fountain. Then, taking deep breaths, they started to blow bubbles with every bit of lung power they could muster. That's better, said the prince. I almost thought I was going to have to live in squalor on this grotly holiday. Just when I thought Prince Grogbar was going to relax and stop barking orders at people, his beady eyes locked onto me. I suddenly felt panicked, so I just shrugged and stared at the floor. You, hideous human child! I lifted my head and stared at the nasty little bogey in his bubble bath. The last thing I was going to do was show him I was nervous, even though I was trying very hard not to squirm. To the kitchen with you, Grogbar barked at me. Fetch me Frog Grog. No. I wish I could tell you that I stood my ground and didn't move. I also wish I could honestly say that I shouted, Get lost, you chubsome chunker, at the prince, but I didn't. Mum and Dad had me well trained to be nice to guests, so before I had time to think, I was halfway to the kitchen. Bummer. Chapter 15. Psst. I clattered around the kitchen, opening cupboards and pulling out their contents. Where did Nancy keep the Frog Grog? Darting up the ladders to the high shelves, I quickly grabbed at the bottles and jars, reading their labels as fast as I could. Frog spawn, snail vomit, badger juice, fermented toenails. It had to be here somewhere. I clambered back to the floor and was about to dash down the stairs to Oof's cellar when... Psst! I stopped in my tracks and looked around the room. Psst! Frankie! The yellow phone in the corner of the kitchen dinged and the button to Granny Regurgita's room clicked up and down repeatedly. Boy, are you there? Granny! I ran over to the metal trumpet and put my ear to it. Granny, is that you? There you are, youngling, came Granny Regurgita's voice. What's going on down there? My toadstools have been itching all morning. That's always a sign of troubliness. Oh, Granny, it's terrible, I said. Our new guest has only been here for a little while, and he's got everyone racing about like slaves. New guest? What new guest? Said Granny. Do you remember the goblin messenger out in the storm last night? What about him? Get on with it, you little zit. He brought us a message saying that Prince Grogbar was coming to stay, I said. He arrived about an hour ago. Prince Grog who? Granny grunted. Prince Grogbar, he's heir to the throne of the Barrow Goblins. Those underlings, Granny said. I could picture her grimacing up in her tower. What on earth are they doing here? Barrow Goblins never come above the ground, let alone visit a hotel so close to a human town. The smell of people turns their stomachs. He's already made that pretty clear, I sighed. Something's not right, Granny mumbled. Can't you come down? I asked. There was no way a teeny goblin would mess with the likes of her, even if he was a prince and had an army of guards with curvy swords. Abso-blunking-lutely not, Granny said. I'm snug as a bundle of bugs up here. You all let him in so you can take care of this mess yourselves. Just stamp on the little twerp. I groaned into the yellowphone as loudly as I could. But boy, Granny's voice stopped me just before I turned away. Keep an eye out. There's no way Barrow Goblins would come above ground without a very, very good reason. Something sneakerish is going on. Chapter 16, From Bad to Worse. After some more frantic searching, I found the bottles of frog grog stashed in a box at the top of the cellar steps, grabbed as many as I could carry and hurried back to the reception hall. I couldn't get the sight of poor Nancy surrounded by guards out of my head. What had we done, letting a tiny pumpkin-sized maniac into the hotel? With any luck, his bubble bath in the fountain would have cheered Grogbar up, and he'd be quietly relaxing instead of barking crazy orders at everyone. I rounded the corner to the dining room, walked through the archway that led into reception, and I stopped and gawped at the scene in front of me. How had this happened? I'd only been gone 15 minutes. The reception hall was in total chaos. Everywhere I looked, Barrow Goblins were clattering about, upturning furniture and smashing vases. Dad was standing near a group of lounging goblin wives, wearing rags just like the other goblin servants. He was holding a fan made from an old broom handle and some sheets of newspaper. Waft us, slave, they snapped to him with sour expressions. Dad flapped the fan back and forth with a look of complete disbelief on his face. Roar! Hoggett howled as he scampered past with the royal shouter riding on his back. My poor little dragon bucked this way and that to shake the rotten old turnip off, but the royal shouter was gripping onto his ears and stayed put. The dust poops were rattling across the floor with silver trays of snacks balanced on their heads, and Mum! I gasped, nearly dropping the bottles of frog grog. My poor mum was in the middle of the hall by the fountain with the belly-dancing goblinettes wearing one of their jingly-jangly tops and skirts. How had they found one to fit? She looked at me in horror as she tried to copy the dance steps of the other goblin ladies. Mum really took customer service and pleasing guests far too seriously sometimes. Don't even think about it, whelpling, Grogbar yelled as I darted towards Mum. I looked up at the Goblin Prince. He was standing on the top of a pile of torn books from the library, still butt naked, and brandishing one of Dad's golf clubs. What fun! He laughed, pointing at poor Mr. Crocombe. A few of the musician goblins had tied the end of his long tongue round the banister rail and were plucking away at it as if it was the string of a double bass. This is the best time I've had in Yonkers, Grogbar said. He swung the golf club over his head and let go of it and cooed with glee as it sailed across the room and smashed through one of the windows by the front door. It was all too much to take in. Goblins were sliding down the railings of the spiral staircase and swinging from the lights. One was even throwing darts at the big painting of great-great-great-granddad Abraham that hung with all the framed reviews above the reception desk. If they had kept this up for much longer, there wouldn't be a hotel left. It was at that moment that a noise filled the reception hall and every goblin dropped what they were doing and stood still. Alright guys, on Monday I will post chapter 17 and we will answer some questions. For now, be having a think, what could the loud noise be? Okay, thank you. See you soon.